Now, before we can start using workflows, there's of course some setup that we first need to do. Let's have a look. So the first thing that we need to set up are the workflow categories. So let me go to the application. So the workflow categories specify the type of workflow. So here you can see a number of categories, and it's nothing more than a code in the description, and you will assign categories when creating new workflows. So for example, you can see administration, finance, so you will recognize from which category a workflow is. Now, creating a new category is of course very easy. So suppose that I would like to create a category for inventory workflows. There you go, so this is the only thing I need to do, enter the code and the description. Again, but I will explain this more in detail in a later step. What do we do with these categories? Well, these are assigned, if I open an existing workflow, to the workflow itself. So here you can see the category. We also can set up workflow user groups. Let's look at how to do this. So the workflow user groups, which are not mandatory, so you can also use workflow without user groups, but they could add some value, for example, in the approval process. Let's have a look. So here in the application, I will go to workflow user groups, and let's click on new to create a new user group. And I will call this user group, for example, finance. So the finance department of the finance user group. And basically what we can do now is add users. So I can say, for example, that Vincent is part of the user group. And let me create a new one. So here I will, let's take Stephen. There we go. And Stephen is also part of the finance user group. And in this case, sequence 2. Now, what can we do with user groups? Well, you can include user groups in an approval process. So and if you use a user group, as we will see in the following module, the system will require, for example, the approval of all the users in a user group, which is based on a specific sequence. So first Vincent will approve, then Stephen, although they can also have both the same sequence if you want. So we will come back to this later in the following module, but to already show you where the user group can be used, let me go to a workflow template, an existing template, for example, the purchase documents, the purchase order workflow. So the first event that happens is the approval request, so the document approval request, and then you will see the add record restriction, which means that someone will have to approve the purchase document. And here you can specify now who should get the approval request. So this can be the approver, but you can also select, for example, now the workflow user group. So if you require the approval of a document by multiple users, you can create a workflow user group in which you include all these users and then set it up here in the approval process, which means that then all the users should approve. Now, many workflows contain steps in which the system will send out notifications to users. Now, let's have a look at how we can set up these notifications. So for the notification setup, we need to specify the templates, the schedule, and we also need to do the SMTP mail setup. Let's have a look. So first of all, I went to application setup, and there's a group notification. So there you can see, for example, the notification entries and the sent entries. So in this case, these will be empty because we haven't sent any notifications yet. But once that we start doing this, you can follow up on the notifications here. Then we need to do first the notification setup. Now there are 3 different templates that we can use. So the first one, as you can see, is the one for new records. Then you can specify the method. Do you want to send notifications by email, or do you want to create a note in the role center of the user? What is the schedule? Instantly or recurring or periodically, for example. And then the display target, web or Windows. So new record is the first one. You can also create a notification template for approvals, where I can also say that approvals should be sent by email or whatever. Then there's overdue, and you can specify the same. You see, so that's the first thing that is important, specifying the templates that you would like to use for these 3 different types. Then there is the schedule. Now, if a notification is sent based on the schedule instantly, this means that the user will instantly, so immediately receive, for example, an email asking for a document approval. However, you could also set up specific schedules, for example, by day, by week, by month. So maybe users require one email by day in which all the document approvals of that day are listed. So instead of sending emails out immediately, you can specify, for example, that you want to send them out on a daily basis. For example, at 12 o'clock or at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever, and the frequency daily or each weekday. And again, the system will then send out one email per day listing all the notifications for a specific user of that day. Now, in order to be able to send out these emails, we need to do the SMTP setup. So if I go to search, if I then go to SMTP, you can go to the SMTP mail setup, and basically you will have to set up here the SMTP server, the port, and so on. If you're using Office 365, you can simply click here on the Apply Office 365 Server Settings, and everything will be set. The only thing left for you to do is enter your user ID and password. Then you can run a test, and you're ready to start sending emails in the system. Now, you also might have to take care of the job queues, because some workflows might use job queues in order to optimize some of the tasks. Let's have a look. So here you can see, so job queue, let's go to the application. And if I go to the job queue entries, which you can do by using the search function, you can see here one example. So my demo company Kronos has created a job queue entry to delegate approval requests. You see, so this is a job queue that is used in one of the workflows. And so if I click on edit, you can see the settings. So we'll not cover them in detail, but you can see that a report is run. So if, for example, a user delegates an approval, this job queue can be used to automate this. So here you can also see the recurring parameters. So should it run on Monday and so on. And also very important, the number of minutes between run. So 1440, which means that this runs once a day. And so each day, this job queue will run one time to see if there are any approval requests that should be delegated. And so this is how you can also include job queues in your workflows that the system might trigger when performing such a workflow. So besides the manual setup that we just had a look at, there's also some system-generated setup. Let's also have a look here. So the dynamic request page, the request page fields, the workflow event hierarchies, workflow event response combinations, and the table relations. This is all system-generated setup on which the workflow functionalities are based. You can modify the setup, however, so let's have a look in the application. So here under administration, you can find these different setup topics. So for example, the dynamic request page entities. So this is defining the pages, so the tables that we can use in the condition of the workflow. Remember, a workflow has an event, condition, and response. And these tables can be used in conditions. So for example, if you're setting up a sales document approval workflow, then in the condition, you of course would like to use conditions based on the sales header and the related sales line. And this is possible, this can be achieved because here these tables are defined. So again, this is important because this can be used in the condition part of the workflow. Then within these conditions, which are the fields that are being presented for the different tables, for customer, vendor, item, and so on. So that's what we can see here. Then there are the workflow event hierarchies. So this is defining the different events that can be listed one after the other. So here you have the preceding events and then the events that can come afterwards. So let me quickly show you an example. If I go to a template, if I take an approval workflow, you can see here the preceding event and then a number of events that can come afterwards, you see? So that's what is being defined here in the hierarchies. And so between all the different events that we have available, and so they're the series of events that can come one after the other, you could say. Okay. Then we have the workflow event response combinations. So this is my event. Which response is possible? For example, create a document from an incoming document. A possible response is remove the record restriction, or approve the approval document, approve the approval request for the record. And so again, this will define which responses we have available for a specific event, as something that we will also see in one of the examples in the upcoming lessons. And then we have the workflow table relations, table relations that we have between specific tables. So the customer, the related table, approval entry, vendor approval entry, sales header, sales line, and so on. So also to use in the different workflow steps. So again, this is all system generated. However, you can see that everything is editable. So you can start modifying this. However, in the basic use of the workflow function, in most of the cases, you don't have to modify these setup tables. You can just use them the way they are generated automatically.